Discover the miraculous journey of Jacob's 12 sons, shocking transformations and God's divine plan. In the 3rd year of Jehoiakim, the winds of discontent howled through the parched lands of Canaan. Here rested Jacob, beloved son of Isaac, under the shade of a gnarled olive tree in Hebron, flanked by his wives Leah and Rachel, along with their maidservants Zilpah and Bilhah. This family, far from the tranquil image they sought to portray, was brimming with jealousy and strife. Every embrace Jacob bestowed upon Joseph, born of Rachel after years of longing, sank deeper into the hearts of his older sons, igniting flames of resentment. "Behold, the dreamer comes," sneered the brothers as Joseph approached the fields of Dothan that fateful day, draped in his richly embroidered robe. The fabric shimmered under the fierce sun, but the brothers' hearts turned dark as they plotted a cruel fate for him. They were intoxicated by envy, and their minds, twisted by hatred, devised a scheme that would forever alter their destinies. With calloused hands, they seized Joseph, casting him into a deep pit. The cries of their younger brother echoed like a haunting lament against the stony walls. A weighty silence enveloped them, masking their guilt under layers of bitterness. In their eyes, visions of their father's grief danced. They emerged victorious in their deception, cloaking Joseph's robe in the blood of a goat, laying it before Jacob. The heart of their father shattered in the dust, unknowingly grieving the son who had become a pawn in their own game of treachery. As time unfurled like a rolling scroll, it brought with it a devastating famine that swept across the lands. The brothers found themselves wrought with desperation, urging one another toward the great city of Egypt, where a powerful figure stood poised to decide their fate. Little did they know, the man who would be their judge was none other than Joseph, adorned in the finery of Pharaoh and cloaked in authority. The circle of their past actions tightened around them as they approached him, unaware of their deep entanglement in a divine design greater than they could fathom. "Let us plead for grain," they murmured, bowing before Joseph, who watched the familiar faces of the brothers that had betrayed him years before. The memories flooded him, mixed with tides of pain and a glimmering resolve to seek reconciliation rather than revenge. Joseph was torn. He recalled the echoes of dreams he had shared once in innocence, visions of grandeur now strange amidst the shadows of the pit. Before we continue with this incredible biblical account, I want to make sure you don't miss any of these powerful scripture stories. Click the bell icon and select all notifications. These biblical narratives have transformed countless lives throughout history. If God's word through this story is blessing you, please like and share with someone who needs to hear about God's faithfulness today. Tell me in the comments, which biblical story has most impacted your faith journey? I'm always amazed how God's word speaks to hearts across generations. Now let's continue with what the Lord did next. Judah grappled with remorse as Joseph concealed his identity and challenged the brothers to confront their hidden guilt. Reuben, stirred by a profound grief for past misdeeds, wrestled with his desire for restoration. The air crackled with tension as they discovered remnants of their past layered upon the brink of an unforeseen renewal. As the sun dipped beneath the horizon over Canaan, Jacob remained unaware of the divine orchestration at hand. God, with every wave of sorrow and every season of abundance, was weaving a tapestry of providence from anguish into a promise of hope. The brothers stood at a pivotal juncture, unaware of the transformation awaiting them beneath the very cloak that once symbolized their betrayal. Would they recognize the hand of God within their suffering? Would healing emerge from the wreckage of their past? What awaited them in the shadow of Joseph's power, wisdom, and grace? The winds whispered secrets of reconciliation as the narrative continued to unfold, urging hearts to believe in a sovereign plan far greater than they could imagine. As Joseph beheld the bowed figures of his brothers, the weight of their shared history pressed upon his heart. His spirit divided between the joy of their return and the wounds of betrayal. He spoke to them in the language of the Egyptians, concealing his true identity. "You are spies," he declared fiercely, eyes narrowing, studying their faces as if to pierce through the veils of deception they wore. "You have come to see the nakedness of the land." The brothers, taken aback, exchanged frantic glances, fear gripping their souls. "No, my lord," they implored, voices trembling. "We are your servants. We have come to buy food. We are all one man's sons, we are honest men, your servants are not spies." At their pleas, Joseph considered their words, remembering the bond once shared under their father's roof, a bond now tarnished by betrayal, yet forged from blood and shared dreams. "I will put you to the test," he responded, his heart heavy, yet filled with the knowledge that they needed to confront their past. "Let one of you go and bring your youngest brother to me. Then your words will be verified, and you shall not die." As the brothers were ushered into prison for 3 days, hope flickered dimly within Joseph's heart. 3 days of reflection weighed upon them, revealing the stirring of conscience. "Truly, we are being punished," Judah confessed on the 3rd day, recalling their treatment of Joseph. "We saw the anguish of his soul when he pleaded with us, yet we would not hear." Ruins of remorse began to build within their spirits, as Joseph observed them from a distance, emotion intertwining with authority. The shadow of his former self loomed large, the life of the favored son now replaced by that of a sovereign leader. He emerged from obscurity to embody both their past and their possible redemption. "Bring forth the brother," Joseph commanded, eyes narrowing ever so slightly, masking the ache within him. In a moment of grace, he filled their sacks with grain, setting silver among their supplies beneath the husk of hope. But he was not done with them yet. He allowed them to depart, yet remained resolute to test their hearts further. On the road back to Canaan, the brothers opened their sacks and found their silver. Terror gripped their souls anew. "What is this that God has done to us?" they exclaimed, fear mounting as they imagined the consequences of their past sins. Upon their return, Jacob's heart sunk upon hearing the truth of their tale, the demand for Benjamin. "My son shall not go down with you," he cried, clinging to Benjamin as the last remnant of Rachel. "Perhaps fate has not yet ceased to chase our family." The anguish of Jacob's heart echoed through the ages, reflecting the trials of a father watching his sons navigate the consequences of their choices. The famine extended its relentless grasp across the land, a hollow reminder of judgment and mercy intertwined. Judah stepped forward with a heartfelt plea, offering himself as a substitute for Benjamin should calamity befall them, a mark of profound transformation within him. Yet beneath the layers of separation, a divine dance unfolded, where Joseph's hidden identity loomed just outside their grasp. In this tangled web of disobedience, anguish, yearning, and reconciliation, God's purposes hovered, unseen yet surely pressing toward fulfillment. Could it be that the betrayal of one brother would lead to the salvation of many? As the echoes of their history resounded, the brothers found themselves on the precipice of choice, uncertain if their dark past might finally yield to redemption. What would the divine tapestry reveal as they confronted the shadows of sorrow? No longer was this merely a story of strife, but an unfolding testimony of God's sovereignty and unyielding faithfulness, preparing to unveil a plan hidden within the hearts of men, as they ventured deeper into the unfolding mystery of His will. And it came to pass that the famine was severe in the land, it ravaged both fields and hearts alike. Jacob, burdened by the weight of his sons' despair and the desperation of their plight, could bear the emptiness of their provisions no longer. "Go again, buy us a little food," he urged, with a heaviness that befell him like a dark cloud, but the brothers hesitated, the specter of accusation looming over them like a shadow. "The man did solemnly warn us, saying, 'You shall not see my face, except your brother be with you.'" Recalling Joseph's words birthed fear anew, yet their father pressed them, "If thou wilt not send Benjamin with us, we will not go down." With a heart torn between dread and necessity, Jacob relented. "If I must lose my children, I shall bear the grief," he murmured, as he gave in to the anguish of fear and love intertwined. He provided his sons with gifts, a little balm, a little honey, spices, and myrrh, hoping to soften the heart of the man who held their fate within his hands. Along with these, they took double silver, for they discovered their coins returned. As they approached the royal city of Egypt once more, an unshakable dread loomed over their hearts, yet, unbeknownst to them, Joseph's heart raced with anticipation. The brothers stood before the grand door of the governor's palace, and Joseph, seeing Benjamin, felt deeply moved. His emotions danced within him, struggling against the veil that concealed his identity. "Is this your younger brother?" Joseph inquired, his voice steady yet tremulous with unspoken affection. God be gracious unto thee, my son." Upon hearing this, Benjamin's eyes widened, igniting a lifeline of connection that pulsed between them. They were escorted to Joseph's house, and fear gripped the brothers once more. "It is because of the silver returned in our sacks that we are brought here, to make a case against us," they whispered, their voices laden with anxiety. But Joseph, seeing their vulnerability, hosted them at his banquet table. The meal was abundant, overflowing with the richness of Egypt, yet the brothers sat, unsure of how to partake, haunted by the shadows of what lay behind them. Joseph, however, sought to draw out their hearts. "Let them eat and drink well, for they are my brothers," he decreed. As the meal unfolded, Joseph observed their dynamics, perceiving the transformation within Judah, who had offered himself as security. The gathering brimmed with an unspoken tension, the reckoning of past sins and present redemption swirled like fragrant incense in the air. Portions were taken to them from Joseph's table, but Benjamin's portion was 5 times as much as any of theirs. And they drank, and were merry with him. Thus the cries of sorrow morphed into unexpected joy, though fear lingered just below the surface. Once the feast was finished and the light began to wane, Joseph meticulously devised a plan to test their hearts once more. He ordered his cup, the silver cup, to be hidden within Benjamin's sack. Early the next morning, as dawn broke over the horizon, Joseph commanded his stewards, "Arise, and pursue after the men, and when ye find them, say unto them, Wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good?" The brothers, blissful yet burdened with guilt, set out for home, believing the shadow of their past had passed. Yet the pursuit would reveal deeper truths, pressing them toward confrontation and resolution. As the sun crested the skies, the stewards caught up with them and laid bare the accusation, trembling as they feared the judgment that awaited. "With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, both let him die, and we also will be my lord's bondmen," they declared, hearts racing toward an uncertain fate. Little did they know, the pieces of God's sovereign plan were aligning in ways they could not yet comprehend, for the journey of redemption was but beginning, leading to a revelation far beyond their comprehension. Would they embrace the fullness of the grace set before them, or would their past condemn them still? What divine purpose awaited as the curtain of their destiny began to draw back? And it came to pass that the stewards overhauled them, pressing forth with urgency until they reached the brothers, who stood bewildered beneath the midday sun. With their countenance pale as death itself, they were confronted with the dire accusation, "Wherefore have ye rewarded evil for good?" The word struck them like thunder, reverberating through their very souls. "God forbid that thy servants should do according to this thing," Judah declared, his voice trembling with fear yet suffused with resolve. "Behold, the silver which we found in our sacks' mouths we brought again unto thee out of the land of Canaan. How then should we steal out of thy lord's house silver or gold?" The stewards, undeterred, insisted, "With whomsoever of thy servants it be found, let him die, and we also will be my lord's bondmen." With hearts pounding in their chests, the brothers hastily opened their sacks, each praying to the God of their fathers for mercy. One by one, as each sack was opened and searched, hope flickered like a wavering candle. When the steward positioned his hand into Benjamin's sack, the glittering silver cup was found. A gasp escaped the brothers, their hearts sinking into despair. "What is this that God hath done unto us?" They lamented, for they were powerless as shadows consumed them, haunted by the sins of the past. Then Judah, his heart swelling with sorrow, approached Joseph's house with desperation. "O my lord, let thy servant speak a word in my lord's ears, and let not thy anger burn against thy servant," he implored. All the weight of their father's heart heavy with grief now rested upon Judah's shoulders. "For I became surety for the lad, saying, If I bring him not unto thee, then let me bear the blame forever." Joseph surveyed the scene, his heart quickened within him, keenly aware that beneath this testing circumstance lay the strands of a greater tapestry. A longing filled the air. It was the fragrance of redemption that mingled with the scent of incense. Judah laid himself bare before Joseph, recounting their father's deep grief at the thought of losing Benjamin. "Now therefore, let thy servant, I pray thee, abide instead of the lad, a bondman to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brethren." The words came forth like an offering upon the altar, and they pierced through the veil of Joseph's heart. Here, he witnessed the metamorphosis of the men who once cast him aside, now rendering their lives for the sake of one. Joseph could constrain himself no longer, tears streamed down his face, reflecting the father's sorrow interwoven with compassion. "Cause every man to go out from me," he commanded. And when he was alone with his brothers, he cried, "I am Joseph, doth my father yet live?" In that moment of revelation, their hearts lost in trepidation, for they realized the man before them was indeed their brother whom they had betrayed. He saw the fear etched into their faces and spoke softly, "Be not grieved, nor angry with yourselves, that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life." The words bore the weight of a divine purpose, echoing through time and eternity, revealing how the hand of God had guided their tribulations for a greater good. Thus, the brothers were enveloped by the sheer grace of forgiveness, leading them to a fellowship that would span generations, one that was steeped in the promise of future redemption. "Come near to me," Joseph beckoned to them, and as they stepped forward, the tapestry of God's plan unfurled further. "For these 2 years hath the famine been in the land, and yet there are 5 years, in which there shall neither be earing nor harvest." Yet amidst the joyous reunion, a foreboding stirred. For God was orchestrating unfolding events not just for them, but for a nation that would arise from their loins, a covenant not yet realized, a destiny veiled in mystery. What further revelations would come, as God's purpose continued to draw the family into his divine embrace? And Joseph, filled with both joy and sorrow, looked upon his brothers, saying, "Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, Thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not." His heart brimmed with expectation, for he knew that the reunion would stir the hearts of his beloved father and the entire household. The brothers, with renewed zeal and emboldened by Joseph's revelation, departed with haste, their hearts racing as they traversed the land toward Canaan. As they walked, the memories of their treachery against Joseph wafted through their minds, but joy began to overshadow sorrow, for they could hardly comprehend the miracle that had transpired. Upon reaching their father Jacob, they found him amidst his daily toil. "Father!" they exclaimed, their voices rising with urgency. "Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt." The words fell upon Jacob like a tempest, disbelief stricken his face, and his heart ceased for a moment as he staggered in astonishment. "Speak no more," he cried out, "for it is too much for my soul to bear." And he sank into grief-filled silence, bewildered by the revelation of his long-lost son. But the brothers, eager to bring light into his heart, relayed to Jacob all the words of Joseph, and conveyed the sight of the carts laden with goods from Egypt, bearing precious provisions for their journey. And while the vision seemed as an illusion, the tangible gifts rekindled hope within him, for Jacob's heart began to stir with the flame of belief. "Yeah, I will go see my son before I die," Jacob resolved, moved by a spirit of faith. He gathered his family, and as they prepared for the journey, they could not shake the feeling that the hand of God was at work. They were participants in a divine narrative, one that would alter their lineage forever. Now, as they approached the borders of Egypt, God spoke unto Jacob in the visions of the night, saying, "Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation." The promise echoed through time, God, reminding Jacob of the covenant made with Abraham, and reaffirmed with Isaac. This was a moment of unparalleled significance, for the generations to follow would hinge upon the obedience and faith demonstrated in this very act. When they arrived in Egypt, the air thickened with anticipation. Joseph awaited them, and as he stood before the Egyptians in all his splendor, he saw them coming, their countenance weary yet filled with hope. He ran forth, embracing Benjamin first, and then each of his brothers, enveloping them in a love that transcended their past betrayals. "God hath sent me before you to preserve a posterity in the earth, and to save your lives by a great deliverance," Joseph declared, as understanding dawned upon all present. The brothers experienced the depth of redemption in their brother's forgiveness, and they were gently led into the provision of Pharaoh's house, where they were offered abundant sustenance. Yet over all this rejoicing, the shadow of God's greater purpose loomed ever larger. The family stood on the precipice of destiny, knowing not of the trials that awaited, how they would prosper, yet also become strangers in a land of bondage, as God's sovereign story unfolded through them. And so it was, that as they dwelled in the land of Goshen, the promise made to the patriarchs began to unravel, shrouded in both blessing and burden. Little did they know, the very foundation of Israel would spring forth from these trials and tribulations, leading them toward a future laden with prophetic significance. What was the meaning behind this divine orchestration? What awaited them amidst the coming storms? For the Lord had many wonders yet to reveal through their lineage, and the tapestry of his covenant was about to weave deeper into the heart of his sovereign plan. And it came to pass that Jacob and his sons settled in the land of Goshen, a fertile area overlooked by Pharaoh, where they tended their flocks and prospered. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months, as the household of Jacob flourished beyond measure. The kindness of Joseph towards them was like a river, flowing abundantly from his heart, as he provided for their every need. As the years rolled on, the sons of Jacob grew and multiplied. They became a people, moving from mere families into a great multitude. Yet in the midst of their blessings, Joseph remained burdened, for he recalled the dream he had when he was but a young lad, wherein his brothers bowed before him. The weight of that dream pressed upon him, for he discerned that God was not finished with their story. One fateful day, as Joseph was walking among his brethren, he witnessed them arguing fiercely amongst themselves concerning matters of inheritance and the divided favor of their father. The echoes of jealousy and past grievances filled the air, and Joseph's heart ached as he sought reconciliation among them. "Brothers," he implored, "let us not allow strife to dwell within us. For we are bound by blood and by the promise of God. It is his hand that has brought us here, and his will that shall lead us forward." His voice rang with authority, and although some were resistant, they felt the sincerity of his words stir within them. But there were still murmurs in the shadows, a festering discontent among the older brothers, particularly from the sons of Leah. They saw how Jacob favored Joseph, and their hearts began to harden anew. "Let us not forget, our father once loved our brother the most, despite what he has done," said Reuben, the eldest. "We must be vigilant. Perhaps he seeks to control us, pulling the strings as he did before." Joseph, aware of the perilous undercurrents, sought the counsel of his father. Thus he approached Jacob, whose gaze was strong and weary, as he reclined in his tent. "Father," Joseph spoke gently, "the hearts of my brothers are troubled, and I fear for the unity of our family. I implore you to speak to them, to remind them of the covenant of God that has brought us together." Jacob looked upon his son, remembering the words of the Almighty and the promise bestowed upon him at Bethel. "I shall gather my sons and tell them the ways of our God," he declared. "For they must not stray from the path that has been laid before us." And so, Jacob gathered his sons. With a trembling heart, he recounted the covenant of Abraham, placing their lineage within the grand tapestry of God's design. "Know this," he proclaimed with firmness, "God has chosen us, though we are flawed. We shall become a great nation, yet our unity shall be our strength." As Jacob spoke, the Spirit moved among them, stirring their hearts to recognize the weight of their heritage. They listened with rapt attention, and slowly, the division that had taken root began to falter before their father's wise counsel. But in the shadows of their hearts, an unsettling truth lingered. For unbeknownst to them, a new storm loomed on the horizon, a bitter famine that would soon spread over all the land, threatening not only their newfound prosperity but their very existence. In that moment, God once again moved, hinting at the trials that would refine them. The path that lay ahead required faith that was forged in adversity, for the sovereign plan of the Lord was about to unfold with great power. What lessons would Israel learn through these harrowing days? What transformative experiences awaited this proud, yet fragile family? For God's purposes were vast, ready to draw them into a future filled with wonder, as he prepared to reveal the depths of his divine strategy. And it came to pass that the days continued, and the air over Goshen grew heavy with the impending darkness of famine. The land no longer yielded its bounty, and the flocks of Jacob became fewer, for the grass turned brown and the wells began to dry. Jacob, seeing the concern etched upon the faces of his sons as they gathered, spoke words laden with wisdom and a heaviness of heart. "My sons," he began, "the land falters, and we must seek provisions lest we perish in this wilderness. We must journey to Egypt, for I have heard of corn reserved there." His sons looked at one another, memories of their last encounter with Joseph bubbling uncomfortably to the surface. Yet desperation steeled their resolve, and thus they replied, "We will heed your word, but what shall we say when we stand before the ruler?" With a heavy sigh, Jacob instructed them. "Say that you are the sons of a man from Canaan, who has come in search of bread, and carry with you gifts of the land, that you may find favor." And so it was that the brothers prepared for their journey, gathering their meager offerings, a few spices, almonds, and myrrh, proof of their heritage and a token of goodwill. As they approached the gates of Egypt. As they journeyed, Joseph sat in his palace, burdened still under the weight of his dreams. Though he sat in authority, the discontent and silence of his past cast a long shadow over him. When the brothers of Joseph arrived and stood before him, they did not recognize him, for he was adorned in the regalia of Egypt, and his face bore the dignity of a ruler. Yet he recognized them, and a storm raged within his heart. Would they come bearing the same hatred that had once filled their hearts? Would they remember the love that once bound them, now suffocated under layers of jealousy and betrayal? "From where do you come?" Joseph demanded, his voice deep and commanding, but laced with an unspoken grace. "From the land of Canaan," they replied, trembling yet respectful. "We seek food, for the famine has gripped our land." With keen insight, Joseph feigned severity, knowing that this was the moment of reckoning. "You are spies," he accused. "You have come to see the nakedness of the land." Their hearts sank within them as they denied his accusations, recounting their lineage and the tale of one brother who remained, whom they had left behind. Joseph turned from them, and tears welled in his eyes. "You shall prove your honesty, one of you shall remain with me, while the rest return to prove your words. Bring the youngest to me, that I may see him." His heart both yearned and ached for them, knowing that God's sovereign plan was beginning to unfurl. As they departed Egypt laden with corn but burdened by the anguish of their brother, a tumult brewed within their souls. They began to consider the weight of their past and the longing for reconciliation. Had God once more moved to gather the brokenness, to lead them through the fires of affliction into unity and forgiveness? In Canaan, Jacob received news of this dreadful arrangement. Grief clutched his heart as he lamented over the loss of another son. "Joseph is no more and Simeon is imprisoned," he exclaimed. "Why have you brought this calamity upon me?" Yet even in the depths of sorrow, the providence of the Lord was at work. For what they could not see was the grand narrative of salvation unfolding, a family torn apart being drawn back together under the hand of a God who orchestrates all things. And thus, unbeknownst to them, the very trials they faced were not punishment, but the chisel of God shaping their hearts. What hidden transformations awaited as the story turned? How would the trials forge a new legacy through the lineage of Jacob's sons? For in their midst lay the promise of a Redeemer, a divine plan that held the power to reconcile and restore. And it came to pass that the brothers returned to Canaan with their burden, their hearts heavy with the weight of their father's grief and the fear of their own sins laid bare before the God they had forsaken. As they approached their dwelling, Benjamin the youngest was not yet aware of the gravity of their return, nor the trials that awaited him. Upon entering, Reuben, the firstborn, spoke with trembling lips. "Father, we have returned as you commanded, but dreadful tidings await. Simeon lies imprisoned in Egypt, and they require the presence of Benjamin to release him." Jacob's face turned ashen, and he lamented, "Why have you treated me so? You have told the man of my family, and now you propose to send my beloved son into the jaws of that land?" Judah, rising to speak amid his father's grief, pleaded, "Let me take Benjamin, I shall stand as surety for his safety. For the sake of our family, we must return. The famine strangles our land, and we cannot stand idly by." Yet Jacob's heart was steadfast, unwilling to risk losing another son. "But if misfortune were to befall him, shall I bear such sorrow unto my grave?" he cried, despair thickening the air like the shadows of twilight. In the silence that engulfed them, the children grew anxious, caught between their father's bleeding heart and the fate of their brother held captive. As time ebbed and their supplies dwindled, the situation grew dire, days turned to despairing weeks, and the famine's grip tightened. Finally, Judah moved with courage, the words of their father echoing in his mind the cries of hunger that tormented them daily. "Father, if we do not go back, we will surely die. Our sustenance is spent. We must resolve this matter. Trust in God as providence." Thus Jacob, yielding to necessity, summoned his sons. "If it must be, then take your brother. Bring gifts of the best of the land, balm and honey, spices and nuts. And may God Almighty grant you mercy before the man." As they packed the provisions with trembling hands, they sought the comfort of prayer, beseeching the Lord of hosts for favor. And as they journeyed back, their hearts were heavy with the memory of their sins, yet strangely stirred with hope, for they had been marked as a family chosen, destined for something wondrous even amid their failures. When Joseph beheld them anew, he sensed the transformation stirred by their trials. His heart swelled as he embraced the realities of forgiveness and the potential for restoration. "Is this your younger brother?" he asked, marveling at the sight of Benjamin standing before him, innocent and untainted by their past. With unrestrained emotion, Joseph turned away, tears streaming down his face, for the weight of his decade-long sorrow poured forth, mingled with the hope of rekindled familial love. "Bring them unto my house," he commanded his faithful steward. And as they dined, Joseph sought to understand their hearts, to see whether their spirits had softened, if they had learned the lessons woven into the fabric of their lives. As they conversed over the meal, recounting the woes of the last year, uncertainty mingled with relief washed over them. They knew not that before them sat the very brother whom they had cast aside, in whom the hand of God had guided them back to their roots towards an unfathomable destiny. Yet amid the feasting, Joseph's mind was spinning with divine purpose. For he knew there was a greater work that God was weaving, an act of providence that would lead not only to the salvation of his family but to a triumph that would echo through generations, and thus, the stage was set for reconciliation, for a meeting to be forged in the fires of affliction. For the brothers were about to learn that God's sovereign plan often begins in shadows but concludes in radiant glory. What further trials and grace awaited them? What would be revealed in the unfolding of this divine narrative? And it came to pass that as they ate, Joseph's heart grew heavy with the burden of revelation yet unshared. He observed his brothers with eyes dampened by both sorrow and longing, for they were the vessels of a story not yet fully told. Hidden in the depths of his soul was the secret of his identity, a truth cloaked in shadows. It weighed upon him as the sun's rays pierced the darkness of night. During the meal, Joseph could see the echoes of their past acts of betrayal masked in their grief and anxiety. Their eyes flickered with fear as they were reminded of their sins, and he pondered whether they had truly changed. Driven by the spirit of reconciliation, he resolved to probe deeper. "Tell me, my brothers," he intoned gently, his voice a careful balance of authority and compassion, "tell me of your family. Is your father yet alive? Is there peace among you?" They answered, a tinge of terror lacing their responses, "Our father is still alive, though his spirit is low. And we are but mere servants, striving for sustenance and peace." Joseph's heart clenched at their words, for he felt the profound weight of their pain and the loss that had marred their lives. Then Judah, emboldened by the urgency of their plight, spoke with earnest resolve, "We are bound by our pledge. I would willingly surrender myself that our father would not know sorrow again. Benjamin is the last remnant of Rachel, our mother." Judah's voice faltered, the truth of his sacrifice hanging in the air like incense rising from the altar. At that moment, Joseph could contain himself no longer. He withdrew from their presence, entering his chamber where the cries of his heart echoed off the walls. The tears that fell were not only for the sorrow of lost years but also for the hope of restoration that flickered, like a lamp kindled amidst the dark. Returning to them, he spoke, his voice trembling with emotion, "I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into Egypt." The room froze, silence reigned as the truth of his words pierced through their hearts like an arrow. Their faces blanched, for they understood the gravity of their actions was laid bare before them. "Do not be distressed, nor angry with yourselves," he continued, "for God sent me before you to preserve life. The famine has been upon the land for these 2 years, and there are yet 5 years in which there will be no plowing or harvest. God has sent me ahead of you to ensure your survival and the survival of many. At this revelation, the bond of estrangement began to fray. The brothers were caught in a whirlwind of fear and astonishment, but a seed of faith began to sprout in their hearts, nourished by the grace extended before them. Joseph embraced Benjamin, weeping joyfully. "You, dear brother, are the fulfillment of our Father's love. Though trials may have driven us apart, God's purpose binds us together." The brothers stood in awe, realizing that what had been intended for evil, God had turned for good, to bring about the salvation of many, and so they departed, filled with awe and the resolve to reunite their family. As they journeyed back to their father, a divine promise lingered in the air. The path toward reconciliation had begun, yet the fullness of God's plan lay just beyond their sight. Could it be that the same God who wove their hearts together in brokenness was orchestrating something greater than their understanding? What divine revelations awaited them in the land of their heritage, a promise yet unfulfilled? The journey was far from over, and the tapestry of their lives was but half woven, awaiting the final threads of grace, faith, and redemption. And it came to pass that as the dust settled upon the journey back to Canaan, the anticipation of reunion filled Joseph's heart. For he had seen the transformative power of God's grace at work. The brothers who once betrayed him now stood united under the weight of their redemption, hearts entangled with the blessings of forgiveness. Their former jadedness had given way to a spirit of humility, and they sought their father, eager to unfold the tapestry of God's faithfulness before him. Jacob, filled with weariness, awaited them in the old tent, yet his spirit stirred as the news reached him. The brothers returned bearing Joseph's heartfelt message. "Joseph is alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt." Echoed through the winds, a proclamation of divine provision reviving hope where despair had reigned. Yet even as he absorbed the astonishing news, Jacob wrestled with disbelief. "It is too much for my soul to bear," he confessed, as he fell into awe-stricken silence. But then the gifts from Egypt, donkeys laden with sustenance, treasures from his long-lost son, ignited a flicker of faith. Could it be true that God had orchestrated this deliverance amidst their darkest hour? "It is enough," Jacob finally murmured. "Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go to see him before I die." As they embarked on the journey to Egypt, Jacob's heart pulsed with a mixture of dread and anticipation. Upon arriving, the scene unfolded like a vision from the heavens. Joseph, adorned in royal robes, beheld his father approaching, an echo of the past merging with the promise of a future. He ran to Jacob, clasped him in an embrace, and wept as tears of joy flowed like a river, cascading upon both their shoulders. "God has made me lord of all Egypt," Joseph explained, the weight of his position now intertwined with the grace of reunion. "Our sufferings were not in vain. The Lord has sent me before you to preserve life." In this glorious moment, the echoes of their past dissensions faded into the background, for they were enveloped in a cocoon of divine purpose. The reunion, while born of shared sorrow, culminated in the presence of grace that transcended their failures. God subsequently spoke to Jacob in the night, "Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation." Thus the covenant promise awakened, igniting the fire of hope for descendants not yet born. In this foreign land, filled with uncertainty, they would plant the seeds of a great nation. With open hearts, they settled in the land of Goshen, a promise transformed into sustenance. The family flourished under Joseph's guidance, while the memories of betrayal echoed like fading thunder. Joseph governed with wisdom and compassion, showing them the love of a brother, restored. As the years rolled forward, the sons of Jacob grew into a vast multitude, a people reflecting the richness of God's grace. They learned to dwell in unity, acknowledging that despite nature's perils and the constraints of their past, God had woven them into a narrative greater than they could fathom. Their hearts were molded through the furnace of trials, igniting flames of faith that would illuminate generations to come. And as Joseph faced his own mortality, he summoned the brothers, speaking once more of God's promises. "God will undoubtedly visit you and bring you out of this land unto the land which he swore to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob." In his final moments, Joseph declared, "But when God visits you, carry my bones from this place." His faith stood firm upon the promises of God. He understood that this was merely a chapter in a much grander story, one that remained undimmed by the shadows of their past. And so it was, that the echoes of Jacob's sons reverberated through the ages, their legacy being the embodiment of God's unwavering faithfulness. Each progeny bore witness to a covenant rest, a people bound by the lessons of hardship, and the blessings of redemption. The sovereign hand of the Lord guided them still, leading forward into an uncharted destiny surrounded by trials, yet illuminating the way with hope. Now, dear friends, God's word speaks across generations, calling us to witness His divine plan. To embrace His truths, we must engage with reverence. So today, I urge you to subscribe immediately to our channel to not miss the next powerful biblical stories that can transform your life. Leave a like now to help spread God's word through the algorithm, illuminating the path for countless souls. Do not hesitate to comment your spiritual reflections and testimonies on how this journey has impacted your faith, for each testimony nurtures a root of belief. And I plead with you, share instantly this message with at least 5 friends who need to hear God's truth. This is the moment to help spread biblical truth. Don't wait even one more second, for true believers understand the weight of these actions in reaching more souls for Christ.